All right, we are cooking with gas. All right, welcome everyone. This is a special live stream that I have today. Typically they are on Wednesdays, but I'm really excited to come an extra day this week and share. My colleague Lisa is here with us, so we are going to dive into this conversation. But first, let me just do a couple housekeeping things. I'm going to make sure I've got Facebook pulled up. So if you comment, please leave your comments, questions. We want to be sure to answer everything. So I'll just kind of be checking. If you see me looking to the side, I'm checking for your comments. But today we are talking about basically real talk on masculine and feminine energy and how to create the 5 and 10K months you want using both of these, because I think some of us kind of skew in either direction. And so both are beautiful and we want to lean into them. So that's the conversation we're having today. So if you comment or leave a question, we will answer that for you. And so this is Elisa Becker. We call her Lisa. She owns the business Leap with Lisa. She has a master's in psychology. She's been coaching for 8 years, and she is celebrating 5 years in business. So yay, Lisa, thanks for coming. She is joining us from the south of France, where it is 6 o'clock right now, and I'm just so grateful that she's using her time today to be here in this group, Peaceful and Profitable Entrepreneurs, because I just follow her on social, and we kind of run in some of the same groups, and that's how we got connected. And I just really love her energy and her, voice and message. So I think she's really going to bring a ton of value today. So Lisa, please introduce yourself. Tell us all the amazing things, because we're excited to hear about it.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here to talk with you about this topic. So yeah, you did a great job introducing me. I don't even know what to add. So yeah, I work with like mostly women, and what I do in my work is really to help women take up space and with their businesses to get visible in a way that feels authentic to them, but also like get visible with like confidence, right? Because that is such a big piece to allowing yourself to sell your services, take up space, give value, see yourself as an expert, and all of those things. So those are the main things.
Yay, I love it. And the reason, like I mentioned, we kind of run in the same groups, and I've seen you, I think, on live streams that I've, follow other people. And that's kind of the connection. But Lisa had a great post. She's on Instagram at Leap with Lisa. But it was something you said about like every time you've up leveled, you've invested, but not every time you've invested, you've up leveled. And kind of the secret or the, thing that it all came back to was like groundedness and finding the right support. And that like just really spoke to me. I thought it was just beautifully, of course, I kind of butchered it, but beautifully well said on your end, and just really spoke to me. And I think just opens the door for this conversation, because there's tons of personalities out there. We have different personalities. We have different strengths. And so it's really like curating what you are naturally leaning towards and kind of honing that. Like every, skill or every strong point has like a dark side, and every light has a shadow kind of thing. And so it's really figuring out what that balance is for each of us, and then getting the support that is kind of the balance of that, or really helps us hone that. So what are your thoughts? I know, we kind of wanted to start the conversation with just like why we're talking about masculine and feminine energy and why it's important. So like just kind of using that jumping off piece, like what are your thoughts about kind of like what you've seen?
Oh my God, yeah. So thank you for mentioning that post, because I think it's so important to make this distinction of investing in your business is so powerful and so great. And also not every marketing message is true, and what it comes down to for me, and why I think this conversation is so important, is that being an entrepreneur is such a personal development journey. It's like personal development on steroids. And I think the more you can get to know yourself and have self-awareness, the better you are off in your business, because you will know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And you also know what your things to work on are, and then you can hire the right support, right? And so when it comes to masculine and feminine energy, like you really want to know, and I think maybe we should also put a disclaimer, masculine and feminine energy has nothing to do with genders. I just want to
Find it a little bit if people don't know what we're talking about. That's the point.
Yeah. So it has nothing to do with gender. Like we all have masculine and feminine energy in us, and we skew like more to one or the other. And to say it super simply, I don't know what your definition would be. I'm interested to hear that, but I think the very simplest thing to say is that the masculine is kind of the giving and the feminine is the receiving energy. What do you think about that?
That's how I think about it, like the yin and the yang. And like, especially for me as a business owner and a mom, like it was really just like freeing when someone one time said that being a mom was such a masculine energy. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Because like, I feel like a drill sergeant sometimes, and I'm just like trying to get people from one place to another. And so it's like this very nurturing role. And like, it still has all these masculine traits that like can really skew in one direction. So I think it's really helpful to think of like masculine and feminine, like of really not being like male, female, or what the role is, but more of like, yeah, like the masculine being more of like getting stuff done, executing on things or implementing. And then the feminine is more of like the receiving and the muse and the, it takes both sides, but just seeing that like business owners can like be in that masculine role. And like, just thinking of it that way is helpful.
Yeah. And I think when we are aware of our own patterns and aware of our own strength, and then we know what our growth opportunity is, like you just unlocked like the secret to success, right? When you know like, oh, this is me, this is my strength, this is my superpower, and in order to grow, like those are the opportunities for me, you're golden. And I think this is why it's such a important conversation, how everyone can find their own balance with like their masculine and feminine energies.
Yeah. And I work with a lot of clients who are, kind of more in the like creative world. And I mean, we're all creators as business owners, but they really are like super creative, just kind of feel all over the place, which happens to most of us as business owners anyway, like the shiny ball syndrome or the monkey brain. And so like they come to me because I can kind of just like fizzle things away and narrow things down that don't need to be there. And so I think your magic and what you typically see people come to you is that they're kind of on that spectrum of like hustling more and like the getting stuff done type of personality. And like, what have you kind of seen is helpful when you're talking to them about this masculine and feminine energy?
I think the first step is always to not make yourself wrong for what your strength is, right? I think we can do that so much as women and also as business owners, say, like that is not working, or like I am doing too much of that or too little of that. I think it's great. Like if a client comes to me and she is very much a doer and like a go-getter and ambitious and like is getting things done and is like systematic and all of those things, like that's great. That's amazing. That's an amazing quality to have as a business owner. And so I think the first thing is to celebrate that about yourself and really acknowledge that this is a superpower, and also that most likely this is something that you can help other people with, right? Because this is such a like easy energy for you to be in. And then the growth opportunity is, how can a client like that, like a business owner that is more in the masculine energy, how can they also sit back and be open to receiving without constantly having to push and do, but just receiving and feeling really worthy of just receiving?
Yeah. And that's something I definitely resonate with, because I am more of that masculine energy. Like I'm very left brain, I majored in accounting. Like when I got to accounting, I was just like, oh, like my brain thinks this way. Like I'm not the only one, like it just was like, thank you. And so my background is numbers and like looking in QuickBooks, and I love the data piece that I use with my clients. And so like seeing how that really supports my clients, and then still like I go to my coach and I'm like, like I feel like I know these patterns of myself of not being like, you know, more into the receiving energy. And I feel like I have to do everything. And then just even seeing my growth and my coach reflecting it back to me, they're like, actually, you are kind of sitting in the receiving, like actually you aren't holding it as tightly as I've seen you do. And just being like, oh yeah, because like this is normally my pattern. And I'm so used to being like, am I in this pattern? Am I doing this thing again? And just having that reflected and being like, oh, actually, yeah, I've come a long way. And like, it's just so helpful to see that like that growth that you're like, not always trying to like fight, but it's just kind of like one of those edges that, like you said, like, it's there and you get to lean into it, and just seeing like, oh, dang, it does kind of get to be a little easier and I do get better at it. Does that, and I know we wanted to kind of like, we kind of talked about like the misconceptions and what people think of like masculine and feminine energy, but I guess like kind of moving into more like the heart of the matter. What have you seen like what I was talking about with my experience? Do you have that with your clients where you're like, you're actually doing better than you think? And yeah, I can see these different shifts in them.
You know what I see? So, I mean, what you were just explaining is you're really far along in your like journey with that, right? If you're like, oh well, I'm actually like doing it, because so many people are not even aware of where they land in the spectrum, and for them, right, it's like it's like this famous saying of, a fish in the water doesn't know it's in the water because it's all they know. And so a lot of people are always in, for example, the masculine, and they don't even recognize that, and then they think because this is so natural to them, it's like their water to them, right? They think, oh, I just have to do more of the doing to get what I want, right? To get to those 5K month, 10K month, to get to my next client. Whereas what I have seen with my clients is, once you kind of find your own balance, and for example, someone who is like very in the masculine and always tries to answer the problems that arise with doing more masculine, if they are like, okay, I am allowed to stop, I am allowed to sit back, like physically, I'm allowed to sit back, I'm allowed to receive, things can happen really quickly when we also like turn up the volume on like the other energy that is not so like natural or like easily accessible for us. So that is like a big thing that I've seen with a couple of clients in like both directions, right? And also what I have seen with myself, because like I am more naturally in the feminine energy. I have a lot of examples of things just like happening for me, and I'm very good at receiving. I have won so many things, it's really funny. But once I kind of like, because sometimes being in the feminine energy, you can kind of outsource your power, right? And once I understood like, oh, I also have power when I do something, I can make something happen, which is a very masculine energy, right? Then things in my business started to shift really quickly because I like let this other energy in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like I always see it from this side of like, I'm doing and I do more, and if I keep doing this, and then there is that other piece of, well, it must just always need to be magic, or it must always just need to be like God, source, universe supporting me. But there is that like, oh, well, it doesn't have to be like magic, or it doesn't have to be woo or anything crazy. Like it literally be like, I do kind of these things and then it causes these things to happen. And so like, that's such a good point about the feminine side. Cause like, I don't gravitate to that side. So it's like, oh yeah, I guess that does happen for people, but it's like, I'm in this, like, I do these things and it makes this happen. Whereas like the feminine side, that's where they get to lean in, is that like, yeah, I can, visualize and do all these fun energetics and receiving, and like it just gets to be a cool thing that like I can put things in place and it just kind of gets a result. So that is like that, both. And like what I think about mine is like, and I heard this from somewhere, I didn't come up with this analogy, but it's like a backpack with rocks that you just get to set down, and it's like, oh, dang, like what a difference. Like that makes a huge difference. And so like that awareness for your clients and seeing like just first the awareness piece of it, and then being like, oh, okay, here's this huge opportunity, or here's this huge area to lean into that like it doesn't have to be like the same thing that I keep doing and I keep going after and just hit that like wall. It's like literally there's this whole world, you know, that opens up when you shift into that side that you have not gravitated to.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what can be really harmful sometimes in the online space is that sometimes the content you see online in regards to anything, but also to masculine and feminine energy, can be very just like one thing or the other, right? And I think this is where it gets not helpful at all. Because if you see, you know, let's just say, okay, like some people are kind of like promoting being more in the feminine, right? And then it almost comes off in marketing messages as if you only need the feminine and you only need to receive and you only need to, you know, be in a receiving state and in the flow state. And yes, that is very important, but you also really need to take action and make things happen, and vice versa, right? Like there are also like coaches or marketers who say, you know, wake up at 5 a.m. and do the hustle and da da da, and you know, you don't pay attention to, I don't know, like what your body needs and nurturing and self-care and all of those things. Like no, like just like hustle and do more, then you will get more. And as so often, like the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I also think like the middle and this balance looks very differently for like any one person. And this is why I know you're like on the same page, but I think this is why one-on-one coaching is so important, because it's not like one recipe of, or like one blueprint of, you know, this is how you balance masculine and feminine energy. We're also different, and so it looks so like differently for any one of us, really, how this balance looks like.
Yeah. Can I tell you a funny story about my first two investments? You're going to really appreciate this. So my first investment was like, okay, my background was in bookkeeping and accounting, and I did my bookkeeping services, and I wanted to like kind of expand into more like this one-to-one advisory stuff. And so the first group program I did was very much towards accountants. It was all like male accountants, and it was like get payment on the phone. Here's kind of the script type of thing. And it just, you know, it was this whole thing that I went through, and I was just like left, like didn't use any of it. I was afraid they were going to like call me and like find out like that I wasn't implementing anything, you know. It was just like, ugh. And then I went into this like feminine mastermind that was very like, you know, like all this, you know, orgasmic manifestation stuff, and you know, visualize the DMs of people, you know, coming in and wanting to pay you in full, but there was no like strategy or talking about like any of it, like a sales process or your first offer or like the, you know, client journey, like none of that. So it was so interesting. Like I did a huge pendulum switch with like both of those. And then after that, it was like, okay, cool. Like now I see my middle ground and where like feels good to me. Like I've literally experienced both, spent thousands of dollars in both, you know, and like now I kind of know my sweet spot and like, you know, have someone to support me there. But it was just like I don't know if I could have gotten to where I am without doing both of those to really see where my sweet spot is. And like I wouldn't want someone to feel like they had to do that to find their sweet spot. And so it's like, you know, yeah, that one's the one support, like you were saying, is kind of like the bridge between both of those of like, you know, finding someone who is grounded that kind of maybe is either, and what are your thoughts? Like, do you like think that like someone who's more feminine would be a good match with you? Or is it like kind of we need the yin and the yang? Or you think, yes, like can attract like I don't know that I really have an opinion about this, but I'm interested to hear yours.
So I have thought quite a bit about that. And I think well, what I see, the people who naturally come into my space are, and who resonate with my style of coaching are typically more in the masculine. And I think it feels really healing for them to like be in my more feminine energy. Although I have to say I love, like I have found to love like structures and organization too. But
because that just comes with running a business of your
exactly,
size.
yeah,
Like it just has to happen.
Exactly, it has to happen, and like you can. I think everyone can find the beauty in that too. From well, that's like a different side note, but like for me, all of the systems have to be like pretty. That's how I kind of like trick myself to love systems. If it's like pretty and I have color coded things, then I'm like happy and really love systems. But so I think a lot of people who naturally come to me are more in the masculine, and I also think when I see who I invested in and the coaches I have worked with, I really work well with coaches also who are more in the masculine, because there is this just like a natural rebalancing of the energies, right? When you work together that way. I will say, however, if you work with somebody who is an experienced coach one-on-one, it really doesn't matter that much, because if that person is a good coach, like what their job is really is to look at you as an individual and kind of like learn you, right? And learn your patterns, and then like remind you like, oh, what are your growth opportunities, or what are your comfort zone that you kind of like slowly over time want to grow, right? So like if you work with somebody one-on-one who is a good coach, for me it really doesn't matter. I also have clients who are very much like me and more in feminine, and I once like we get to this point of really like knowing each other, and like I can read her, and I like know, you know, what the patterns are she falls back into when she is stressed, or when she like gets in her head or has like limiting belief, like what those patterns are. I just know what then works for her and what doesn't work for her, right?
That's so well said. I feel like you just articulated what I couldn't like put into words when I was like, I don't have an opinion on this. Because it really is like, yeah, like my job as a coach is to know my client, like regardless of the feminine, masculine energy that either of us have. And so like holding that as my goal. And even with my team members, like my job is to know them and what they work best with and kind of all that. And so I think you just like articulated it better than like so well said, because I think that is like the really like great, one of the great takeaways, like, you know, if we wanted to think about that for people, like, okay, you know, finding that person that is the right match for them. I know we both have seen it out there, like all these, you know, changes in the industry and like, you know, promises or marketing or whatever, and just bringing it back to like finding the right support for you and like kind of cutting it down to like the person that you're working with, or even if it's a program, but just like seeing like what you need and like making sure that that person that you're going to potentially work with like sees you for whatever energy you have. Is that kind of like thought there?
Yeah, and also I realized that one-on-one coaching is not accessible for everyone because it is a higher price point, obviously. But so that's like the only caveat maybe I would give. If for somebody one-on-one coaching is out of their budget, then again, the first piece is to get self-awareness of like what, not to like look at who has the shiniest like marketing message and then sign up for that, but to first get really clear on like what's going on, like what is kind of the problem that I need to solve here, and then to pick a program or a course, like something that is in your budget that fits that particular problem, right?
Yeah, I think that's really well said, because there's so much out there that like, I mean, I'll listen to a podcast and then at the end I'm like, I need to get that, you know, and I'm like, I know that I don't, I already have support, like we good, but like, you know, you're just like, dang, that was good. Like, So it's very much out there. So I love that you said, just really like going within yourself, like what's the problem to solve, the gap to close, like kind of the thing, not just like, oh, you can blow up, with Pinterest over here or blow up your email list. It's
Mhm.
like really like just like don't even like start there. Just more of like what you need and what you're seeing in your business. And um yeah, I think that's just a really helpful way to like broach the maybe I'm not going to hire the one-to-one coach, but I can still get support within my budget and look for these things. And
Yeah.
then, what else? Like we're talking about other like takeaways for people and like practical things like um anything with like energy and using their more feminine energy or their more masculine energy in a way like that you've seen works really well with clients, kind of like, you know, loving challenges that you give them or homework or, anything like that. That's like, like tangible takeaways for people.
So when it comes to the thing that they are innately very good at, I would always say to put that kind of like outwardly and make it like you can say, oh, this is my superpower, right? Like I am so, if you're like more the masculine, I'm like, oh, I'm so amazing at, helping, like holding you accountable, right? Or like creating systems and strategies around what you need and really like pushing that as your superpower. And then behind the scenes, and this is kind of like the what we so often don't want to do behind the scenes, like for your inner growth, I would always say do the thing that you have resistance towards, which is also like, okay, I don't want to do that. But if
What's the thing you don't want to do? So that's
exactly,
kind of
yeah,
what you need to do.
exactly. If it's like, you know, doing a spreadsheet and 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 getting clear around the data in your business, if you're like, oh my god, that sounds like my worst nightmare, I don't want to do that, honestly, like you should probably do that. And if on the other hand you're feeling like, oh my god, I don't want to like sit in silence and like feel into my heart space, then you probably should do that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I've worked with a few clients who are very in the feminine and, ran their businesses with like their intuition and their gut and all this. And then, our work together was kind of like getting numbers around what they actually kind of thought. And so like one of my clients, she closed down, it was, I don't remember the exact number. It was almost 100K a year of this revenue stream that just didn't feel in alignment with her. Like she had all this like anxiety about like if this one person couldn't show up on a regular basis, then like the whole thing kind of fell apart. She couldn't jump in and
Mhm.
that was just too stretchy for her. So like our work together was seeing like what would be the potential like numbers, data, results on her business, like revenue and expenses that would go away, our team, spend and kind of like the nuts and bolts of it. And so she used that with just like her kind of intuition and like feeling aligned in her business. Because even if it had been like $200,000 a year, like I still don't think she would have kept it, like just because it didn't sit with her very well and it
Mhm.
caused her like a lot of internal struggle. But it was nice for her to see like the numbers of like, okay, I literally know how this is going to affect my business when I close this down. So like I take both and just like hold them together. So yeah, it's just seeing that like, even if you are in the feminine, like I love like using my strength of like the QuickBooks Online
Mhm.
and like the, behind the scenes with the Google Analytics 4 and all that to be like, okay, you can use your intuition and like we get to either back it up or, maybe it's like we get to tweak it a little bit because, not that it was wrong, but like we just get to move in this direction a little bit more because we literally like have this like information. And so I think it's so cool to just like see that they fit together so well. And so like I love what you said about like if you're really wanting to like create the spreadsheets or the systems, like yes, me personally, my, I'm not gonna say hell on earth, but like my like thing that I don't want to do is to sit there and write like a bragging post about myself, or just something like
Yeah.
that where I'm just like, "Ugh, that is really uncomfortable and I'm gonna be super sweaty when I post that or send that to anyone. Um, yeah, that's been like my edge to lean into is like a masculine more side of that, like
Mhm.
piece of, like showing up as my authentic self and kind of more that side of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting how like we have resistance towards the thing that can always get us to the next level, right? Whether that is doing the data or whether that is doing the bragging post or like receiving and being okay with that. One of the things I told one of my clients recently was because who is also more in the masculine and the like doing and has a hard time receiving, to just use, everyone has those moments where they receive something from, your partner, your parents, a random person on the street, a compliment, whatever it is, to take that as an opportunity to practice receiving and not say, oh no, I don't need that, or no, like, but to be like, okay, thank you, and just practice receiving. And that is, if for everyone who's more in the masculine, I think that is something very simple, also kind of uncomfortable for a lot of people, but like a very simple thing that you can do in everyday life to, invite more of this like receiving energy into your life.
That's a really great loving challenge for anyone out there listening who feels like they're in more of that energy. Because I like use myself as an example. I recently asked my husband to help more with like taking the kids to school to stuff. And then one night he's like, okay, yeah, I can take them, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And my first gut reaction was like, no, it's fine. I got it. And I'm like, no, I literally asked for help and he's offering it. So like, shut your mouth, take it, but like, that is like, it's hard for me and hard for people like me. And so like, just seeing that like the challenge doesn't have to be like, oh, now I need to go like write a bragging post or, anything like out there to the world. It can literally be like internal within yourself, like no one else sees it, but like the work is still there.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be something really like personal like that, where you practice being in like the other energy, and it will like spill over into your business, because like it's you as a person who is growing, right? One of the biggest like growth spurts for me was when I trained for a half marathon, because it is this, like, you are literally like, you can't receive anything, right? It's just like you doing the work and showing up and being committed, and then you create the outcome of, oh, I can now run the half marathon. And that was a really just weirdly healing experience for me, to have this experience of, oh wait, when I am committed and I follow through and I put in the action even when I don't want to, then I get the outcome that I want. And again, that was something super personal. It has nothing to do with my business, but had a huge effect on me as a person, and then also in regards to like my business.
Yeah. And it's like when I literally almost said those words to him, I was like, I brought it back to business the next morning in my journaling. I was like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, kind of thing. And so just like kind of really just double checking myself and just being like, okay, are there places where I'm doing this in business? Like, where can I kind of like lean in more for that? So yeah, I think that's a really great opportunity that anyone out there can do. And I just haven't checked for comments, but I think just honing in on that like main thing of the thing that you don't want to do is probably the thing that you can really would benefit you. And so just like challenging people to go there. I don't know why oh, here it is. Okay, no questions or comments yet, but if anyone has them on the replay, we will be happy to answer them later. So be sure to drop them here. Anything else that's like a tangible, I feel like that is like a really great one of just doing the thing that doesn't come natural to you. Anything else as we kind of like wrap this up, or anything else that comes to mind?
One thing I would say with when we're talking about like growth like that, right? And I always think we have to be mindful that not every season needs to be a growth season.
Mhm.
So if somebody hears that and is already super overwhelmed with their personal life, the state of the world, their business, etc., then and here's now us talking about, oh, if there's a thing you have resistance toward, like go do that now. Like if you're super overwhelmed, like it's okay if you do that like a month from now or 2 months from now. You know what I mean? I think that's an important like caveat to this conversation of the first thing you always want to do is celebrate yourself for who you are and what your innate qualities are, and not making yourself wrong for that. And then when you feel I want to grow, then you know what the lever is to pull.
Yeah, yeah, that's really true. And I'm glad you brought that up because there are different seasons and different phases for, I mean, business is a long-term game. I've been here like 8 years and you've been in coaching for 8 and you've been in your business for 5. So it's like, it's not like every month or every quarter that's like, I need to go after this and I need to do this. Like that's definitely like agreed. That's not it at all. And like a great point to have to this conversation for anyone is that like, yeah, like you can only handle so much. Like your nervous system can only handle so much. And so just thinking about like what's very nurturing to you and like maybe you're more in kind of like the nurturing, like taking care of myself, or just kind of maintaining. And then like seeing like maybe, when you kind of get through that hurdle or that season, then seeing like maybe it is more of the growth season. And not even from like the personal, I mean, that you could just bring that back to business in general, like I took the month of July off to be with my kids. And then coming back in August, it was very like harsh on my system. So it was just like, I'm just going to maintain like status quo for at least the next month while I like reintegrate. And then then we can think about growing because I needed that like longer runway to like alchemize back in. I don't know if that's the right word, but just kind of like get back into the daily routine. So just seeing that in business with phases and seasons, and it's not, always like go, 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 go. It's just that like ebb and flow and constriction and expansion and, just very much being mindful of that.
And maybe one last thing that came to mind is if you maybe don't feel ready to like take some of that action that you feel resistance towards, but you want to kind of dabble in the energy that you feel you could bring a little bit more into your life. And I would also suggest like reading a book or listening to a podcast that has where the author has more of that like opposite energy, right? Can be really, really helpful to be like, oh, to open up your mind and bringing just a little bit of that energy into your life. And that's maybe more accessible, like starting out with, right? Than being like, okay, I'm doing the receiving activation, whatever.
Yeah. And what kind of, I know for me on the masculine side, I'm like Joe Dispenza, Wayne Dwyer, like, kind of those like leveraging the universe, those kind of books really support me. Do you have examples for like either like just to give people a starting place? Like if they were on the more masculine side, maybe they'd enjoy this, or if they're on the more feminine side, maybe you've seen people enjoy this. Like, do you have kind of a starting place that people you can give?
Okay, let me think. So one thing that comes up immediately when you're more in the masculine and you want to bring more feminine energy into your life, I really love Pussy, a Reclamation. I don't know if you know this one. It's a great book. I'm like, oh wait, what's her name? I know the author kind of like calls herself Mama Gina. But if you put in Amazon like Pussy, a Reclamation, you will find it. It's a really good book about receiving really and like honoring being in the feminine energy. Like read that book if you're more like cueing towards the masculine. And then I am trying to think like if you're more cueing towards the feminine, things that really helped me was like anything from Seth Godin. I really like him. He did, wait, what was this is marketing, for example.
Where did that
Recently,
come from?
I recently that happened on a client call too, where I think there are some hand symbols. I think this is what I don't know. There are some hand symbols where Zoom is then translating that into
That's
like
funny. Is it gonna do it for me? No. Well,
I
that's
don't
funny.
I have to figure that out. But yeah, if you're more like something that helped me was Seth Godin for sure. I have read a couple of his books and I really appreciate like his masculine take that is also like not super. I don't want like any bro marketing, like hustle culture, right? But I want like a healthy masculine energy. And I feel Seth Godin really has a good, like healthy doing energy.
Okay, that's good to know. And when you said the other book, say the name again, the acclamation, what was it?
Pussy reclamation.
Okay, good to know. And that made me think of the book Do Less by Kate Northup, I think. And I got it from our local library, but the front of it, it looks kind of like any old kind of like time management book, but reading it is very like, your energy's tied to the cycle of the moon and like, egg wisdom, which I thought was super interesting about like, the egg doesn't chase the sperm, like it sits here and it waits and the sperm comes to it. And it's just this whole like really just thought it was a really cool idea. So that was a good book, I thought, if you are more masculine side. Just seeing like your timing of your energy with the months versus the 24-hour cycle that like men are on. And, like if you're a woman with a cycle, then you're more tuned to the cycles of the moon. And so that was just like a really cool, just even if I can't do anything about it, like, okay, the new moon's coming. I don't really want to talk to tons of people, but it's like, even if you can't change your schedule, at least you can like acknowledge like, oh, well, it makes sense that like I would want to crawl in bed because of this phase that I'm in. And so just like all that permission giving and grace, just kind of right there. So that was helpful.
And that's exactly it, right? That's exactly, and it's so funny that you say that, but that's exactly the feminine energy of I can't do anything about it. Like it's not me doing something, it's kind of like flowing with whatever energy presents itself and like kind of like flowing with life. So yeah, I just found that's, yeah, of course you can't do anything about it.
This is just the natural, like your phases and energy go up and you want to give more and pull back and like working with it versus like fighting it or just like I did this last week, I had this amount of energy last week, why don't I have this much energy this week? And just like seeing that like it doesn't stay the same, and that's totally fine and beautiful, and go with it.
Yeah, I love that. I need to put that on my reading list. That sounds good.
Yeah, Do Less. She has another book too, but I don't know the name of it, but I think it's Kate North. I'll look it up.
I know the name. Yeah.
Okay. But I think anything else that you have, I mean, feel free to like any more comments, but tell us, where people can find you, what you have if someone is interested in working with you, like tell us all the fun stuff.
Okay, so I am most active on Instagram. I love Instagram. I love creating reels. I'm very creative. So if you want, and I always try to bring a little bit of like fun into.
Yes. Are those on Mondays?
Well, I'm not that structured. Yeah. And that's really interesting too. Like even when you, I know we wanted to wrap up the conversation, but even when you think about like content systems, I think for me, for example, what I do to balance kind of like the masculine and the feminine with my like content strategy is I have the masculine, I have the strategy, I'm doing this, and that on those days. And then I allow myself to also do things differently than what I have planned and to flow with when I have an amazing idea and I see a sound like an audio for a reel that I love, and I feel inspired to do something right now, then I let myself do that, and I'm not, holding on to the system, and I just need to, do this system justice. I let myself flow with the creative energies too. So
Yeah,
that's just like a little caveat.
I agree, because like I work with clients with their content, and it's like, the structure doesn't replace the inspiration or the creativity. It's just there as like a springboard, or like to fall back on if you have a busy week.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, I can't be creative or do something in the moment. And it's not like, well, I can only be creative and in the moment. It's just like that. We talked about like that balance, that in between of like, what's your sweet spot? Like what feels like a good framework and a foundation. And then on that, I can like play within that and like go outside of it if it feels good, and just like having that permission and like wherewithal, I guess, to just kind of know what and just even looking like, you're like, hey, today I feel like doing this, like giving yourself just like that, like your brain would even think that like, oh yeah, of course I can do this, because why not? Feel creative right now. That was a good point.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's why, sometimes I will do a different post on Monday. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Leap with Lisa. My website is also leapwithlisa.com. Everything's the same. And I have a couple of different offers, but what I invite people to always do first is do a free call with me. And it can either be a clarity call when like, oh, okay, I want to work with you, I want to invest, but I don't know like which of your coaching programs is the best. Then do a clarity call and we'll figure out this way, what is the problem and what is your current growth opportunity, and which of my coaching offers is the best fit for that. And if you want just like a sneak peek of what it's like to work with me, what it's like to be on a coaching call with me, I have a free 30-minute coaching call where I help you to get clear on your niche, because I feel that's the first thing that I want my clients to get really crystal clear around, like, who are you helping, how are you helping them, because that's the foundation to like all the offer, visibility, like everything that comes after that, right?
That they don't need to be out here making reels and everything if they don't have that piece
Exactly.
done,
If they
nailed
don't know
down.
like who they are serving with their offer, like it doesn't make sense to start creating content.
Yeah, agreed. Well, yay. Thank you again so much for being here. We'll make sure in the group, like I want you to be able to, drop your link to your website and go ahead and have that. So if people, they can go ahead and grab it right there. And then thank you again, Lisa. I really appreciate it. This was a really fun conversation, and I just so appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I loved our conversation.
Have a great afternoon, evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.